Kevin, are you there?
I am here. Thank you very much.
I thank you for coming on the air today. It's a pleasure having you on and talking about your vision for our city over the next 4 years. You've been in council for how long now?
Since 2008, my first term. This is my first term, so just about 4 years.
Okay, yeah, awesome. As I do with everybody that comes on the show, I'd like to just give our listeners just a bit of a biography lesson or a little bit of a history to Kevin Klein and what got to the point of running for City Hall and now to mayor, and just a brief history of what brought to this point.
I think that's a good question because I do get often asked that. My family and my background is, very modest. We had, many ups and downs in our lives and struggles, and we learned a lot from that. My mother was murdered by her husband, which, taught us many lessons. And again, you had to learn how to survive and learn how to fight back and how to never give up. So that kind of led me and what happened after that to look at work in law enforcement, which I realized would be too difficult because of our past, in the sense of what a lot of calls are domestic violence calls and stuff. Started getting into the media because part of that hope was I would be able to hold elected officials and others accountable. That was kind of the childish dream that I had, and then that got me into the business side of media. That's where that led me, and I then quickly kind of went up the management and executive level. I was a finalist for Canada's Top 40 Under 40. I was. Yeah, back in the 90s, but I was 5 years old. So, yeah, and I've worked in the newspaper industry. I've worked for several large organizations across Canada. I would consider to be in the top 10 of Canadian companies. So I kind of got away from the media world and, was working with organizations on a consulting basis and sitting on a few board of directors in the U.S. And I'd been asked to run for politics before. And the last 2 years before I ran, I just started seeing our city change. And it really reminded me of, what it's like to be in a situation where you're concerned every day about every dollar you spend. And then you see what's happening at a political level. And I just decided, you know what, I don't want to be a politician, which I am, so I always get questioned by the media, fair enough. But I wanted to change the way we looked at things at City Hall. And that's why I got into it. And now that I've been there for 4 years, I can really see the dysfunction. And I can see that political ambitions and lack of experience in the real world, leads to some decisions that I think could be made better. I think there's a number of changes we could do with what we already have that would improve the quality of life for residents. I love Winnipeg. I chose to live here, and I want a city that is prosperous for everyone and has a good quality of life for everyone. And that we offer services that make a difference, so that we offer good services. Because if you offer good services to residents, you quickly become a great city that people want to live in.
Yes, it's really important, and that's generally a situation that's not necessarily met every day.
Yes.
Coming from, I'm not sure you know this now, but coming from a lived experience perspective, we really need to address, from my standpoint and many others, we need to address issues of poverty and homelessness. The problem today is that there is no concrete answer to homelessness.
No.
That there simply isn't. People think there is, but there really, really isn't. And it all comes down to housing that is geared to income for folks out there that people can actually move into, and then having them supported. I know, we have a good program. The federal government's put in a good program with the Rapid Housing Initiative. and the city's done a pretty good job on distributing that money. And I think we've got somewhere around 150 some odd units in the last two calls put in place. And I know there's more money, coming in for that perspective. What is your stand on how we can improve the low-income housing situation in our city? I know the Winnipeg, regional housing has properties and things, but I think there's other things that the city can do.
I think there's a lot more that other cities can do, and I have a lot of respect for lived experience. One of the things that I didn't really talk about, but I felt it was important now to talk about is that, I've spent a night or two in the Salvation Army shelter many years ago, and it wasn't for a length of time, but I know how that feels, not for somebody who's, certainly going through it for a long stretch. I'll tell you this, we visited some not-for-profit organizations, and one was a large apartment building for families that are trying to get down the right path. And, we spoke to the people working there. The bottom floor is filled with services. There's somebody there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to help people that are living in the apartment building, teach them life skills that we take for granted, right? We take, making a lunch for kids is something that we take for granted. But if you're not taught that, or you didn't experience that yourself, then you need to learn those life skills and the importance of that. And then, so in talking with that group, they had $500,000 was their budget, and they have a large apartment building with many families, and their biggest expense is, over 10% of their budget goes to taxes.
Something wrong with that picture.
I'm sorry?
Said something very wrong with that picture.
Yeah, and there's absolutely some. So this is my take on it, and because I come from the corporate world, people judge me pretty quickly. But I see individuals and I see people as that we have to invest in people. We can't simply just throw money at certain things and say, well, it's out of our hands. We gave them some money, or we gave that group some money.
Yeah.
I think when we look at an organization such as that one. And we know, right, from statistics done across Canada for years and years and years, the cost of somebody who is at the lowest point in their life or experiencing the worst case of their life can cost a city anywhere between $80,000 to $100,000. So why wouldn't we invest that money now so that we fix the problem long term?
Kevin, that's a big question, and it comes down to short-sightedness. I was part of the Adams Day Swap program from about 6 different levels. I think the most experienced person in that project in the entire country. But what that program showed, I'm sure you're aware of the Adams Day Swap program.
Yes.
It was back 10 years, where they in Manitoba alone they interviewed 500 people, and 250 people got apartments, and 250 people did not get apartments. The one in the apartments got brand new furniture and got supported housing, and we're seeing once a week or twice a week, whatever it needs to get them stable in their housing. And even with that, their supported housing and the case managers coming to visit them twice a week, once a week, we found that housing people with supports is cheaper by 22.5% than leaving people on the street. And because of the ambulatory care, because of police and ambulatory care and hospitalization, all that kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
It's people, but people have to think big picture to get to that point. It's just what you were saying. How do we get people to think in that direction?
Well, one of the announcements that we've made as a team is organizations that are providing truly affordable housing. So that's a percentage based on your income. Because far too often the city of Winnipeg says, we
housing geared to income, right? 30% of income.
Yeah, or even maybe it's 25 because we want the way inflation is and such.
Yeah.
So, but if we we can put those obligations in place, and we can have a box with a number of items that they or objectives, and if they click off those objectives, which would be the cost they're charging for rent, we should be able to eliminate their property tax and say, this is our gift to your association. We're not going to charge you property tax because you're helping our community. And if you look at that, if you have an apartment building that's has 100 families in it, and you think about the math and the statistics that have been proven year after year through statistics, through data, through the government of Canada, isn't that an incredible investment? $50,000, and that $50,000 talking to these organizations can go an incredibly long way. And I think that should be the start. The other thing that we've agreed to is say, if somebody is going to provide truly not-for-profit housing, again, based on the ideals that we spoke about, we should be working with them to get quicker permits, to get city land. We should be their partner. We shouldn't be looking at them as another opportunity to charge fees. We have to become partners with them and say, here's what we need for our residents. We'll help you if you help them.
Mm-hmm. That's a really refreshing perspective. I've not heard that from other candidates. Thank you for that.
Oh, you're welcome.
It just makes a lot of sense. And again, what's come up lately is the fact that there's a lot of abandoned housing in our city, and or boarded up housing, and I think and infill lots too. I think that those might be the ones that are salvageable. Might be a place to really. It might be something to start looking at if the structure is sound on these buildings. Can we do something with them? And if not, let's start building on those properties. What are your thoughts on that? On that perspective in the infill? I know that there are fire hazards, and so people are saying, "Well, we just got to take them down."
So my thought, I have a couple of thoughts on this. There's a number. This is where I think city bureaucracy and the inexperience of politicians who in a private world, in a private sector world, so they understand costing and benefits, cost benefits, and so on. So I look at these vacant properties and have put it out publicly. The land is difficult for people to buy. And then when they do buy a house, it costs so much money to tear it down with the city of Winnipeg, and there's other costs involved. So my objective was to say, let's change the policies, because you can't do it on a one-off basis. Let's change those policies and say, we will help you, you can tear down your unit. It's not going to be a high amount of permit cost, and we will help you do it quickly. Because right now it could take about a year to get a permit to tear a house down. But the property becomes...
That's a while.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You have to tell them what you're going to build afterwards. You have to have plans in place.
Then from the time that you apply for your permit to the time you get it, costs have gone up
Substantially. So what I'm looking at is that, first of all, we have to all admit that there's a lot of vacant properties that are used as speculative investing, right? So it's people outside of the province, outside of the country. So we have to start applying fees to those people. And I know some colleagues in the race and others have talked about, well, we're going to give them we're going to charge them, we're going to fine them every year. But if you give a fine and they don't pay it, you can't take the property back. But if you apply a fee, and I'm talking about a substantial fee for keeping a property vacant, that would advance year after year after year. It would increase it would double every year that you keep that property.
And that's sort of what the federal government is doing now for non-resident investors in Canada in properties in places like Vancouver and Toronto.
Exactly. Yeah. I tried to move that at City Council. And to say that we need to address the speculative investment. And I had my colleagues, Councillor Lukes and Councillor Gillingham, say that that's not a real thing, that they didn't believe that we needed that. And I disagree with that thinking. I think we need to force people to do, and here's my other thought. If you're going to build, again, truly affordable housing, because the City of Winnipeg looks at truly affordable housing as 10% below market rate. That's unacceptable.
No, entirely. And that's the thing. And one of the things I rail against all the time, and you hear from me, I really loathe the term affordable housing because it means something different to a person making $10,000 a month compared to a person making $800. I choose the term low-income housing, or use the term low-income housing or housing near to income. But I know exactly what you're talking about, and that really has to be addressed, and I know 10% of, or 90% of market, 75% of market is not affordable. 30% of income, or as you said, 25% of income. There's a lot of people in welfare today paying 80% of what they get to housing.
Right.
And that's deplorable and it's unacceptable.
And think about the families that are in those situations and the quality of life that unfortunately they all have to live within. To me, we're just, the problem continues, and because we're really not addressing it. So if we're not providing a good quality of life where we can give kids they can get involved in sports and we can have programming for them, and it doesn't, the thought that it costs a lot of money is just ridiculous. It doesn't cost a lot of money. It's an investment into our future. And we hear all these candidates that have visions for, our city, but none of it really talks about, well, what about the people in 20 years? Where are we going to be with people? Are we going to have more people that are forced to live on the streets? Or are we going to have less? So my objective is to say, I know that a lot of organizations get funding based on how many homeless people are in the city. I would like to turn that around. We're going to give you funding based on how many people you help.
Mm-hmm. There's a, you know what? That's an amazing perspective. I am a vice chair. I am the vice chair of the community advisory board, and as you know or don't know, we hand out the money. We help in almost Winnipeg determine where the money goes. We are the guardians of money coming down from the federal government.
Yes.
Programs, and we see so many times that money usage is not going to help the people in the right way. And we in our limited power, we have to do something about that. But you're the first person that said something like that, and I'm appreciative of that, because so many people are falling through the cracks because they're not being assessed and not being supported in the right manner by service providers, and I know that firsthand from my time on community advisory boards. Really good point there. I wear several hats in the city. I train multiple departments at City of Winnipeg, including one of your pet objectives is to work with the police, and I actually train the police department. I train the cadets and recruits, and I just did a session with the central processing police there the other day. We're just going to switch gears for a little bit. You have a 10-point plan to reduce crime. We talked just a little bit about that for the time being.
It's a different candidate that's put out a 10-point plan to address crime.
Oh, I found that on your.
No. I talk about on our plan, again, we all have to be realistic because we're at a critical time in our country and in our city and stuff, and a lot of we're at a lot of turning points, and I think crime is important to address, but I look at it again from the best allocation of resources. I've heard a lot of candidates come up and say they're going to reduce the calls for service by 10%. But I don't know how you can say that.
You can't do that.
No. And then I've heard other candidates say, well, we're not going to let police respond to domestic violence calls. We're going to send social workers. And it's like, well, first of all, I can tell you as somebody whose mother was murdered in a domestic violence incident, social workers are not the people that have to attend. And I know from my time as the chair of the Winnipeg Police Board and dealing with police services across the country, that one of the... Yeah, and I quit because I found that the government involvement was impeding what they could get done. Yes, so I think I was the first chair that quit. I wasn't the first councillor to quit from the service because Brian Mays did after I did, but I think I was the first to quit. It doesn't matter. The reason is that I just didn't find, with government involvement and engagement, you just couldn't do anything effective. So I look at it from a different perspective, saying, look, they have to go to these calls. And we and with people like you training our officers or our cadets and so on, we're learning better ways to do things. And every year, even through educators I've talked to, and in my own belief, we get smarter every year. We learn things every year, and we learn how to do policing differently, or how to approach a citizen differently, or And I think our members are doing the best that they can, and they're doing the right training, and they're getting there. But it's our allocation of resources. So I'm not sure if you knew this. In 2002, let's say 2002, 20 years ago. we had 28 patrol units, basically for the entire city of Winnipeg.
Wow.
Today, 2022, 20 years later, we have 28 patrol units for the entire city of Winnipeg.
In all those years, we've just done that.
That's all we've done. So, and what has changed critically in that is how, again, politicians will react to what's on social media, a knee-jerk reaction, try to do a Band-Aid solution, is that we have to look at the allocation of those resources. So what we said publicly for crime is, first of all, we want to work and make sure that our officers have the ability to attend to crimes quicker, because we're hearing that from all residents. And some of the crimes, I can tell you, are in the neighborhoods where domestic violence is a problem, and we need to get officers there to help in those situations. So I would say, what has changed, that I got off of, is that on most nights, and I encourage you to look into this, you could have between 6 to 10 police cars at an emergency room waiting for 5 to 8 hours.
You know what, I saw that, and I thought that was a wonderful idea.
Thank you.
It's such a waste of resources, having those folks sitting around in waiting rooms.
So thank you, and it truly is, and we can address that. It doesn't cost more money. It's just how you manage the resources as a city of Winnipeg. What's your priorities? And people should be the priorities. Same with how I want to change the paramedic responses and put in new paramedic responses. Again,
I was going to ask you about that as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, folks, hang on for a second, Kevin. You're listening to CKW 95.9 FM, your community radio station right here in Winnipeg. And it's right now 12 degrees. I think I spoke before, but it's 12 degrees, and the temperature is falling. It's supposed to be a high of maybe 15, but it's not a great day with the rain. Rain coming down on the folks that have to live out there all the time. It's be kind, folks. Today on the show, I have a really guest on, Kevin Klein. You jumped into the race late. Do you think that hurt you or helped you, or what was the reason for that?
I think we entered the race at the perfect time, and I can answer. It's a good question. It's because the solutions that we're bringing forward, we have short term, and then we have to work on the long term. So we know that we have some really important needs to address. Our city is fractured. It needs some healing. So we have to put in some short term solutions that are actually achievable. Like, we have to have achievable deliverables. That was one of the things that I had with the team, saying, if I'm going to run for mayor, we have to make sure that anything we say is an achievable. It's achievable, and it can be delivered in short term and in long term. So we waited so that we could check, all of the boxes off that we wanted to address for the city of Winnipeg. And a lot of politics, and again, I'm not there. Everyone does what they have to do, and they have their own approach. But one of the reasons I got into this world, if you will, is because we make so many promises on all levels of government, trying to get a vote. And really, none of those promises, for the most part, ever come to fruition because other things happen. The citizens of Winnipeg need to know that our reserve fund is almost empty. So with that, we're required by law to have $71.5 million in the reserve fund. That's a fact, and that's to reduce the risk on the residents and taxpayers of Winnipeg. Well, it's well below that. It's going to be below, I believe it'll be below $20 million, maybe even $10 million. But
scary.
It's scary. And you've got people that are running for office that are making promises that have put us in that position to build more roads or to do this or to do that, all of which will just cost people more money. I mean, we have to fix the roads. But again, let's look at what we're doing today, and are we doing it effectively? And if we're not, why don't we reallocate funds to what our priorities are? Like the fact that, we say we give money to this organization to help clean up garbage so it's out of our hands. Well, we're the leaders of the city of Winnipeg. We're not cheerleaders for the public service or whatever. We're leaders. And if you drive down the street and you see a lot of garbage, that's on us. You can't say that's on any group or any one individual or anything. It's on us. It's our responsibility. So getting into the race when we did is because I wanted to look at where our money was going. I wanted to get a better idea of how we allocate our resources. That's why I decided to run for council first.
Excellent.
And then when we run for mayor, at least I have an inside look. And then I wanted to make sure that I just didn't enter the race and say, vote for me, and happy days will be back, and we're going to return to the good old days on day one. And because I would love that, but it's not realistic.
Yeah, for sure. There's a lot of repair, to be, as you said, for fractured. And one of the things that is fractured, but I think getting a little bit better with the new premier is the relationship between the city. And I have to ask everybody this because it's important that the city and the province find some sort of cohesive relationship. What do you see in that regard between yourself and the province as far as relationship is concerned? Because we all know it's been fractured for a long time.
Well, I think it's been fractured for a long time, and I can speak from being a counselor and listening to other counselors in the public service. I think we all have to take a deep breath and remember our responsibilities, because each level of government has a set of responsibilities. It gets very unfortunate when we allow discussions or requests to become part of, or to involve the public in discussions, because then everyone puts their guard up. So, yeah, and the public service, I'm sure our individuals, see themselves in one way, and the province public service sees their authority in one way. We just kind of need to sit down and say, look, let's throw all the egos out. I'm not saying that anybody's egotistical. I'm saying that as a phrase. So let's check our egos at the door and sit down and go, okay, we can do this as a city to help the province, and that's the paramedic announcement that I made.
Right.
That's going to reduce visits to the emergency room. Can you help us by putting sheriffs at the hospital?
Yeah.
So
I think that's such a brilliant idea.
it's just bringing people to the table, right? And I mean, we can't criticize other levels of government unless we're perfect, and nobody's perfect. So I would encourage, like I have a lot of respect for Heather Stephenson. I have a lot of respect for Wob Canoe. I talk to Wob quite often, and most of our conversations are about hockey, because I refereed his kids as they were growing up and stuff, and he was a coach, and I have a lot of respect for Dugald. Here's what I think has been lost in the last 25 years of politics. We've lost understanding who we work for.
That's that was going to be my next talking point on this, because that is exactly the way I feel about things. And there's so much bickering going on, and it impedes, or it's a barrier to helping those that we serve, right?
Right, and I think I have a really good. I'm in a good position to recognize that, because I came from the private sector, and in the private sector, if you didn't take care of your customers, if you didn't take care of your employees, you were out of business pretty quick. So when I hear complaints from our employees in whatever division it might be, and I hear complaints from our city, or we hear people arguing about, trying to get a garbage bin just so they, I mean, all of that is just so silly. Like, let's work together. Let's take, and when I talk to people in our community meetings and such, I tell them at the start, like, listen, you can ask me any question you want, because I'm applying for a job. And that's what when you said, what's your vision? My vision is that we change City Hall to ensure that we know what our first priority is. And our first priority isn't our next election. It's the people.
And on that good note, we're just going to pause for a bit of a music break and give our listeners ears a rest.
Yeah.
Come back in about 2 minutes.
Unfortunately, I have to. I'm sorry. Unfortunately, I have another meeting I have to get to. So
right.
I'd love to talk to you again, and I really appreciate the time, and I apologize, but.
We will have you on again, because there will be another half an hour. CRT through rules says we have to give you another half an hour. So we'll see if we can schedule something else in down the road, and then we can talk about the poverty reduction strategy and Human Rights Committee of Council, which I'm both invested in.
Yes, you are.
And on both of those boards and committees. So, yes, well, thank you for coming on.
Thank you.
And we will continue this discussion another time, and I'll get in touch with Nancy for you.
I appreciate you listening, and I appreciate everyone listening, all your audience. So thank you very much.